Are there words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control.
We think we have it very well under control. We pretty much shut it down. It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle, it will disappear. We can hold that down, as we're saying, to 100,000. It's a horrible number. We all together have done a very good job.
As the nation surpassed 4 million COVID cases and over 145,000 deaths this week.
It's something that we have tremendous control of. I think we're going to win faster than people think, I hope. You're going to lose a number of people to the flu, but you're going to lose more people by putting a country into a massive recession or depression. The virus is going to disappear. I feel about vaccines like I feel about tests. This is going to go away without a vaccine.
The coronavirus itself, SARS-CoV-2, is here to stay.
As the U.S. surpasses a staggering 400,000 deaths, the incoming CDC director says another 100,000 could die in the next month.
It is what it is. It's going to fade away. We're in very good shape.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your response to this crisis?
I'd rate it a 10. I think we've done a great job.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Dumps. Big, massive dumps.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Wow, it's Thursday. We got a good show today. A lot of stuff in the news today. Yeah, I keep saying today, so that's a great start. So we are going to cover a lot of stuff. So we've got Donald Trump versus the Capitol Riot Committee. We got the Kraken lawyers, an update on that. We got Republicans posting cringe, as usual. Tucker Carlson at war with the bisexuals. That's interesting. We'll see how that goes. And plenty of other stuff. So before we talk about that, quick note, after the show today, I will be on RAGES. I'll be on the TYT Twitch channel, so check that out. It's twitch.com/TYT, I believe. And so go there. That should be a lot of fun. I'm going to be on that show. We're going to play a game called Fake News. Fake news, the fakest news in the world. Tremendously fake. So it should be a lot of fun. I'll do that, but first, we got a lot of stories to get through. I just want to touch on as well what's going on in Kabul. So there were explosions. Some people were killed, casualties. I don't know who did it. Could it be the Taliban? And now, I don't know. The Taliban says, oh, we didn't do it. Now they're talking about like some ISIS-K variant. I love how ISIS has variants, just like the COVID-19. That apparently the Taliban doesn't like, and we don't like ISIS-K, obviously. And lots of terrible stuff going on. Let's just say that. And I kind of a little bit worried, right, that all of this in the media frenzy is going to at least 60 deaths and hundreds of injured, or as U.S. media says, 12 Americans died. Yeah, seemingly weird that we forget about the Afghans that are there, that are being killed. Result. So that's terrible. And of course, getting back to what I was worried about, here comes the calls for more war. Here comes the calls for vengeance. Here comes the call for people to come back into Afghanistan. So, oh, great. Yeah, wonderful. So, again, that's what I know right now. Obviously, there's a lot of details that I need to go and find. and look up and do more of a comprehensive report on this. But already, not good. It's a bad situation that's happening. So, 12 U.S. soldiers dead. Yeah. So, there it is. Disastrous. As usual. All right. More war after withdrawals, the American way. Yeah. Again, that's the thing that I'm concerned about the most. Many Taliban dead too. Yeah, I'll do some major reading up on that about what's going on. I don't necessarily trust Taliban sources, but that's some of the sources that we've seen so far making statements on who might have done the bombing. All right, but anyway, that's a day. That's a story for another day, another time. Let's get to the stuff that we have prepared already. Jump in. All right. Former President Donald Trump is raging amid reports that the House Select Committee on the January 6th Capitol insurrection are seeking documents about his, wait for it, mental stability. Mental stability. What are you talking about? He's a very stable genius. There's no question about that. In fact, here's what he said about that.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
He's a very, very smart person. And in fact, so why would they question his mental stability? Yeah, weird. So now in a statement released on Wednesday night, Trump called the committee leftist. Here's the statement. The leftist select committee has further exposed itself as a partisan sham and a waste of taxpayer dollars with the request that's time to distract Americans from historic and global catastrophes brought on by the failures of Joe Biden and the Democrats. Now, if he is referring to the situation going on in Afghanistan, I hate to break it to you, buddy, but you are also partly to blame on this one for setting up, again, the correct policy of withdrawal. I agree that Donald Trump and Joe Biden, they actually agree on the policy of getting out of Afghanistan, as do the majority of the American people. Now, the way it was done, of course, and the way that it was set up, there's fault. There's plenty of fault to go around for everybody involved. That said, right? Oh, it's a distraction. Well, of course, everything's a distraction. But I love how he points out, oh, this is leftist. It's leftist. You realize that this is bipartisan, right? There are Republicans on the select committee. You have Representative Liz Cheney, who's a horrible person. I don't agree with her on almost anything. And Adam Kinzinger, another Republican, who, again, on policy, I don't agree. So I'm sorry to burst your bubble. There really aren't any leftists on this committee. Again, this was even appointed. Everybody was appointed by Nancy Pelosi. So obviously, there's not going to be any leftists on this panel. The person that is closest to a leftist is Jamie Raskin, who's a representative. So now, what makes him progressive or a leftist, or as close to being a leftist as somebody in the Democratic Party can be? He does support Medicare for all, and he's a co-signer for Medicare for all. You know who supports Medicare for all? The majority of the American people. Also, the majority, 53% of voters, said that they approve of the House Select Committee's probe, knowing that, of course, Speaker Pelosi did appoint all of its members. I mean, if you're going to appoint Republicans that voted to overturn the election, there's a little bit of a bias there, isn't it? I know, but you could say, of course, there's a bias on the other side because it's Democrats, which is why, of course, you do have those Republicans that are also on this panel. Nonetheless, I'm going to break that down here. 80% of Democrats do support this probe, 49% of independents. Now, that means 36% disapprove and the rest don't really know. And about And only about a quarter of all Republicans support this committee. So, of course, Republicans are not in favor of this because, oh no, please don't investigate us. Or, you know, the people that we like are voters for literally breaking into the Capitol building, smashing windows, beating cops, and smearing crap all over the place. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. They're Team Trump. And understand that Trumpism is a cult on the Republican side, on the conservative side. And it doesn't matter. Facts, logic, and reason cannot get through to the hardcore cultists. And so Trump doesn't want to share any responsibility, however, for his reckless rhetoric, urging insane people to do insane things. And of course, there are other people involved, Rudy Giuliani, Bo Brooks, et cetera, et cetera. But I love how he puts out this statement, okay? Only because they want to look into his mental stability. As I mentioned, I am a very stable genius. I won the presidency for my first time, and I won. That makes me very smart and very stable. Jesus Christ. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Ugh. In fact, more quotes on that. And they are relevant. Actually, throughout my life, my two greatest assets have been mental stability and being like really smart. Not smart, but genius, and a very stable genius at that. I'm speaking with myself, number one, because I have a very good brain, and I've said a lot of things. I know what I'm doing, and I listen to a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people, and at the appropriate time, I'll tell you who the people are. But I speak to a lot of people. My primary consultant is myself, and I have, you know, a very good instinct for this stuff. And good, look, as much as I love to read those quotes in order to dunk on him, there is a purpose to it. There is a method to the madness. Because I want you to compare this to what I'm about to read you. This is the rest of Trump's statement. He said, allegedly, unfortunately, this partisan exercise is being performed at the expense of long-standing legal principles of privilege. Executive privilege will be defended, not just on behalf of my administration and the patriots who worked beside me, but on behalf of the office of the President of the United States and the future of our nation. These Democrats have only one tired trick political theater, and their latest request only reinforces that pathetic reality. So, he didn't write that. He didn't write that. We all know it. He didn't write it. Why? It's too legible and not word salady enough. Okay? So, it was likely written by Stephen Miller or somebody like that, somebody within his orbit, on the direction of Trump, who was probably pissed off. Because, again, you know how much of a stable genius he is, person, woman, man, camera, TV. Hey, to be fair, it was a hard test, but don't worry, he passed it with flying colors. Okay? But what he fails to understand now is something that was mentioned in his own statement, executive privilege. So, all right, what privilege? That's what I got to ask. What privilege does he have? You are not a member of the executive branch anymore. You don't have executive privilege. And you should already know that. In July, the New York Times, the Politico reported that the Department of Justice has informed the Trump administration witnesses that it does not support an assertion of executive privilege in its presidential communications and deliberative process. The department then advised witnesses in other cases that they can give unrestricted testimony, which is how it was revealed that Trump tried to manipulate the Justice Department to overthrow the 2020 election. So now the question is, how do you invoke privilege you don't have? But you can't. There is no executive privilege, meaning they can go ahead with interviewing people that were formerly in the Trump administration about what happened on January 6th. So I don't know. Maybe does he believe that he's still in power or has legal power? Maybe he does. I mean, Okay, maybe he's just incredibly stupid and doesn't read. He's a one-pager kind of guy, has no idea how government actually works. Or the other thing is that the fact that his brain is legitimately broken. And so it's probably for the best either way that he's no longer in power. Nonetheless, he can go ahead and waste his time, like he's planning to do, to try to sue, because he can certainly launch lawsuits to try to block it. He's going to ultimately lose. That will not prevail, but it will stall it out for, I guess, some time. Okay. Sure. All right. Go to the Kraken stuff. Give me a second here. The Kraken lawyers, who had spent months spreading the big lie in order to overturn the 2020 election, appear to be in a little bit of trouble themselves. According to Law and Crime, a federal judge ordered that Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood be referred for a professional conduct investigation, which could lead to possible suspension or disbarment. Fun. In a scathing 110-page ruling, U.S. District Judge Linda Parker tore into the pro-Trump lawyers, and here's a few highlights. Again, I'm not going to read the full 110 pages, but here's a few of those. She writes, "This lawsuit represents a historic and profound abuse of the judicial process. It is one thing to take on the charge of vindicating rights associated with an allegedly fraudulent election. It is another to take on the charge of deceiving a federal court and the American people into believing that rights were infringed without regard to whether any laws or rights were in fact violated. This is what happened here. Plaintiffs asked this court to ignore the orderly statutory scheme established to challenge elections and to ignore the will of millions of voters. This court cannot and will not do. This the court cannot and will not do. The people have spoken." Yes, true. They have in an election where it was basically COVID on the ballot, and Donald Trump had failed utterly to control the coronavirus during his time in office, and so the people decided to go to Biden. Now, that's not to say that everything is great under Biden right now, as COVID cases are, especially mostly like 99% among the unvaccinated, are still hammering these areas. Not good. So now, anyway, she added, by the way, in italics for emphasis, that this case was never about fraud. It was about undermining the people's faith in our democracy and debasing the judicial process to do so. And added, "While there are many arenas, including print, television, and social media, where protestations, conjecture, and speculation may be advanced, such expressions are neither permitted nor welcomed in a court of law. And while we as a country pride ourselves on the freedoms embodied within the First Amendment, it's well established that an attorney's freedom of speech is circumscribed upon entering the courtroom." Meaning, of course, you get into a courtroom and you can't do those things. You cannot do the conjecture and speculation. You have to tell the truth. So that's why these cases didn't go anywhere. Because it turned out that their proof, their so-called proof, was conspiracy and innuendo. That's it. That's unprovable in court. So it's great for clicks and views on Fox and on YouTube conspiracy videos, but it doesn't hold up in court. You need evidence. You need actual evidence. Sworn affidavits, by the way, and they'll go on and on about, oh, I've got a sworn affidavit from this one person, this rando, and they say that it's true. Okay, well, why don't we look into that? Oh, right. But affidavits are not evidence upon themselves. And you're just, what? They're basically really counting in the court to say, oh, no, trust me, dog. Totally fine. No, not fine. In fact, let me give you an example of one of the affidavits that I tried to use. There was an anonymous affidavit by a witness who was codenamed Spider and a so-called intelligence expert. Now, both of those people were later unmasked by the Washington Post in stories reporting that they had inflated their credentials, meaning they were not who they say they were, and lied about who they were and about what they knew. And if they lied about that, well, then, of course, they would lie about what they've seen. Oops. But again, if you lie in court and you say, oh, I've got evidence, and then never produce it, and just say, don't worry, just trust me, bro, I know what I'm talking about. No, that's not going to fly in a courtroom. You're going to get in trouble. And that's what they did, and that's why all these lawsuits lost. That's why they're getting obliterated by this federal judge. Rudy Giuliani, for example, had already lost his ability to practice law in New York. And now there will possibly be consequences for these so-called Kraken lawyers. Parker had asked disciplinary committees to investigate other people as well: Julia Holler, Emily Newman, Brandon Johnston, Howard Hendler, Scott Hagerstrom, Gregory Roll, and Stephanie Lynn Gentilla in their home states, to see if, of course, they might also get disbarred. Holler and Newman happen to be former Trump officials serving in HUD and Homeland Security, respectively. And Klein Hendler has also done a lot of partisan cases on behalf of Republicans, which have not gone well. One example of that was he decided to sue Major League Baseball over the cancellation of the All-Star game as a result of COVID. You want to guess how that worked out? Not well. Not well. On that, here's what Parker wrote. Indeed, attorneys take an oath to uphold and honor our legal system. The sanctity of both the courtroom and the litigation process are preserved only when attorneys adhere to this oath and follow the rules. And only when courts impose sanctions, when attorneys do not. And despite the haze of confusion, commotion, and chaos counsel intentionally attempted to create by filing this lawsuit, one thing is perfectly clear: plaintiffs' attorneys have scorned their oath, flouted the rules, and attempted to undermine the integrity of the judiciary along the way. So what's the consequences here? Well, the judge further ordered the Kraken lawyers to complete and pay for, out of pocket, continuing legal education courses on pleading standards and election law. Plaintiffs' attorneys shall each complete at least 12 hours of continuing legal education in the subjects of pleading standards, at least 6 hours total, and election law, at least 6 hours total, within 6 months of the decision. Any courses must be offered by nonpartisan organizations and must be paid for at counsel's expense. Within 6 months of this decision, each attorney representing plaintiffs shall file an affidavit in this case describing the content and length of courses attended to satisfy this requirement. And of course, if they don't, well, they're going to likely get disbarred and perhaps face even further consequences for ignoring a court order. Overall, very light sentence, very light decision. But again, they are being referred to their states in order to see if they will get disbarred in their own states. So much for the Kraken, which ended up, of course, being a dead floppy fish wrapped in some rotten seaweed. Sad. All right. So let's just check out what's going here before we move on to the next story. A lot of weirdos today. Like, super weirdos. Like, okay. Oh, come on, read the whole thing. We'd be here for ages. But it was really good. Oh, remember the drunk lady that wouldn't shut up during the hearings? Good time. Isn't that the one that Rudy Giuliani farted on? Oh, that was good times. That was good times. Okay. Anyway, a lot of weirdos. You know what they're doing? Like, this is of course the new Benghazi. Watch, Republicans will now be calling for. Well, they're already calling for impeachment. That was like the first time, right? So that was like the first day Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted to impeach Joe Biden, and then, well, now they've got their Benghazi moment. Biden lied. 12 Americans died. Oh, here we go again. Wait, if this happened under Trump, and by the way, it has. U.S. soldiers in Somalia died under President Donald Trump. So, I mean, did they make a big deal about that? No, they didn't. They don't actually care. They're out here trying to make political points in a way to, of course, to, attack Biden. When stuff like that happens under Trump, well, it's never his fault. It's always somehow the Democrats' fault, and it's always just partisan, just absolute bullshit. I lost my Twitter account because I let Jenna Ellis know she was exposed to COVID via Giuliani farts or Giuliani farts. Yes. Oh my God. I'm sorry. That is pretty hilarious, though. You know what? That Twitter account, I mean, that's worth it. I'd lose my account for that. Worth it. It went out a hero. Let's just say that. Conservatives only care when it's not their guy, and Dems always want to move past it. Conservatives only care when it's not their guy doing it bad, and Dems always want to move past it. Yeah, I find the lack of Democrats being able to look backwards and hold people accountable like the most frustrating thing in the world. Like, no, hold people accountable. And then, of course, when they actually try to with Trump, stop talking about it. It's January 6th. What do you do? And I'm seeing this from, like, so-called lefty accounts. I'm like, forget about January 6th. It doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Yes, you know what else? Also matters? Housing assistance. Also matters the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package. That's also what matters. And guess what? They are working on it. I mean, that just, the framework just got passed in the House of Representatives. All right, or was that the Senate? But it was clearing the way in order to vote on and to start adding in and filling in the policies that will be involved in that $3.5 trillion reconciliation package in the Senate. So we're working on that. If you forget, it will happen again. It's funny, they say the same thing. Never forget 9/11. Never forget. Both actually, it's just a framework. Yeah, Tempo Dan. 918. Absolutely. It is just a framework. It needs to get filled in. They're probably going to do like the Votorama stuff where you're going to add amendments to it. The Republicans are going to introduce really terrible things. And then, of course, you're going to have Democrats that propose some things. They're going to try to take things out. All that stuff. And so, of course, I'm going to give you details on that when I know them. And that's going to get going probably sometime leading up, in a couple of weeks leading up to October. But we'll see what happens. Four soldiers died in Niger a few months after Trump took office, and no one cared. The staffers must have been in the panic and pronouncing Niger. Oh, God. Oh, God. The guy that can't say Yosemite pronounced it Yosemites. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding, they don't want to actually, say those things. Oh, the disaster in the making. But yeah. All right. Anyway, let's move on. We got, ironically, cringy tweets. It's a treat. That's what it is. Yosemites. Oh God. All right. Anyway. Thailand. Oh. Just to let you know, I've been requesting Dr. Rashad Ritchie to ask you to come in Indisputable. I'd love to. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. Actually, I would love to do that. So I don't know. Maybe maybe I'll reach out, or if he reaches out. Hey, we follow each other on Twitter, so you know we could maybe work on setting something up. That'd be a lot of fun. All right. Let's go to cringe. Republicans cannot stop posting cringe on Twitter about vaccines. Even after, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene got kicked off Twitter for posting cringe on vaccines. So now the latest example came from Representative Thomas Massey, who posted something so idiotic, so dumb, so mind-bogglingly smooth-brained that he, in hindsight, thought, oh no, I'm gonna have to delete this. Delete. Gotta get rid of it. Now, you all know everything on the internet is forever. That's the rule. So, of course, it was caught by a reporter, Andrew Kaczynski of CNN's K-File, and now it is, once again, it is forever. And so I'm going to show that to you. So prepare for the cringe, and you're not going to be surprised. Here we go. If you have to carry a card on you to gain access to a restaurant, venue, or an event in your own country, that's no longer a free country. And of course, you can see writing on the wrist. This is another reference to the Holocaust. That one definitely should have stayed in the drafts, bro. Just saying. Why is it? I mean, more than anybody, conservatives break Godwin's law. Okay? Everything comes down to Nazis, Holocaust, when it's nowhere near comparable at all. At all. And so, look, I'm gonna make a comparison here. Okay, I'm gonna make my own comparison. So now the irony about the outrage about vaccine passports, okay, is that weirdly enough, yeah, they say, oh, I don't want to have to show a card or an ID or anything like that. No, to go anywhere. Oh, really? Well, you're the same people that are in favor of an ID to vote. Why is that? Again, this is asking people to go and get vaccinated and then show people the card to show that you are not carrying an infectious disease that will infect other people, so that people can actually have a safe place to gather and enjoy themselves and have a fun time without having to worry about bringing COVID home to their families. So now the difference, of course, between the voter ID and the vaccine cards is one thing is for public health. And the other thing is a political ploy to reduce the number of people voting. Okay? Now, obviously, voter ID is 100% political ploy to stop people from voting. I mean, what it does is it erects barriers to casting your ballot, which does primarily affect poor people. While, of course, getting vaccinated is free. You can literally go to your local drugstore, get your first dose in like 5 minutes, and then, of course, if you can't do that, and there are plenty of people who can't, there's big problems with access to poor communities, in getting the virus. And in fact, there's a lot of people think, as a result of America's horrific healthcare system that generally tends to crush people in the dirt, this time, the vaccine, as I mentioned, is free, but people, because of that, think, that's going to cost me money. I can't afford to get a vaccine. That's expensive. I don't have insurance. And so those are significant issues. And a lot of that is being, again, there are plans to go out and have outreach programs that will, basically help to get people vaccinated, low-income Americans. They've been putting out pop-up clinics. There have been people that are going out and basically treating it kind of like a political campaign, doing door-to-door, knocking on doors, things like that. Now, notice that none of that happens when Republicans say, we'll do voter ID. Okay, do they make sure that everyone who needs an ID can get an ID? Do they help communities, low-income communities? Do they go and knock on doors and say, this is how you can get your ID. I will help you. We'll bus you. We'll take you all in so that you can get your voter ID so that you can vote in this election, and we can make sure things are secure. No, they don't. And that is the big difference. None of that happens. And that's, by the way, also the difference between us and other countries that do have a mandatory voter ID. They make it as easy and as simple as possible and accessible as possible for people to get registered and to have that voter ID. But in America, understand that this is made purposely difficult in order to prevent people from voting. And by the people, I mean, there are certain people they prevent from voting. And so, and of course, those people happen to be people of fewer means. So that said, I'm making that comparison, but obviously we're not talking about voting. We're talking about vaccine passports, okay? So let me be clear. Vaccine passports are not the same as abducting and murdering millions of people. Just saying, having to show a little card at the door ain't the same. And no, it's not going to lead down that slippery slope. All right, that's just not going to happen. Now, what proof do I have? Well, I have history on my side. Turns out we already have vaccine passports. Hell, even the people that are pushing this notion that vaccine passports are fascism literally work at Fox News that has a vaccine passport system. But anyway, so now you might notice that we have vaccine passports to get to school. You have vaccine passports to go and travel to certain places, certain countries, or else they will not accept you if you are not, for example, vaccinated for yellow fever. And there is a long history of this. Back in 1885, U.S. border officials often required passengers to provide evidence that they had been vaccinated from smallpox. So now, generally, there was a scar that you would get or pockmarks in the face showing that you had smallpox. And during a series of smallpox outbreaks across the United States from 1898 through 1903, turns out many states had actually authorized compulsory vaccinations. They will force those vaccines into your arms. While other leaders sought to use the power of public and private institutions to pressure reluctant Americans into accepting the smallpox vaccine. Yes, we actually did that in America. We forced people to get vaccines. Oh my God! No! Oh God, how dare you! Oh my God! Freedom! I thought this was America! There's more. Employers also across the country had acted to make smallpox immunity a condition of employment. Factories, mines, railroads, and other industrial workplaces with tight quarters were particularly forceful in demanding proof of vaccination. Back in 1903, Maine's government decreed that no person be allowed to enter the employ of or work in a lumber camp cannot show a good vaccination scar. So you get the point. We've had this for a very long time. And of course, history not only shows that anti-vaxxers are not only wrong, but of course have always been wrong. In fact, one Illinois writer back in 1923 said, quote, "A scar from forced vaccination is a brand, a mark of medical tyranny and despotism." This is back in 1923. In 1893, a Raleigh newspaper carried the account of an elderly man recalling anti-vaxxers of earlier decades who believed that childhood vaccines would lead young people to develop what they called bovine propensities. Did turn them into cows? Is that what? Okay, all right. Some, he remembered, regarded a vaccination scar as the mark of the beast. Of course, a reference to Revelations and the Bible. So now, the reason I point this out, again, history, all right? We've seen this before. We've heard all these excuses before to not get vaccinated, okay? We're seeing it now. We've seen it before. This has already happened. And I'll tell you the end result of the smallpox vaccine, just in case you're still confused at what actually happened, or you know, I'm going to spoil the plot of that movie, right? But the same arguments, the same kinds of people that push fake cures, snake oil, do massive disinformation, scream freedom. Well, history illustrates what eventually happens. Turns out that if you had since we had stringent enforcement of smallpox vaccination requirements over the span of decades, eventually pressured vaccine-hesitant populations to accept them, and as a result, the United States effectively eradicated smallpox within its borders by the middle of the 20th century. And then, of course, by that time, we went on to fight the Nazis, win, and of course, ironically, bring some of them over to work for the United States government, but you know, during Operation Paperclip. But you know, yeah, that's another history lesson. Point is, anti-vaxxers are wrong, and they're full of shit. And I'm not, and I'm saying these are the people. I'm saying that of the people who are spreading this disinformation willfully. Okay, that are using the same kind of tired old wrong rhetoric to push anti-science, anti-life agendas, and nonsense conspiracy theories. Now, as a result, you have a population of people that, you know, regular people essentially, that are conned into believing these things and sometimes get seriously ill, spread the virus around, sometimes even incubate a new and worse variant of said virus, or either dying or suffering long-term damage to their bodies or infecting their loved ones. So, yeah, that is what's going on right now. Anti-vaxxers are the ones keeping COVID-19 around. This is why we still have this issue. They are taking away our freedom to return to somewhat of a normal life. They have infringed upon us. Stop treading on us, bro. Get your boot off our necks. We're over this. We're over this shit, and we're over you. Get a goddamn clue, and then get a vaccine. Stop. Now, as far as Thomas Massie is concerned, Thomas Massie's a turd. He's a piece of crap. He's going to get people killed, probably already has, and is right now clutching them pearls by putting out that incredibly cringe, insulting tweet. I mean, think about the survivors of the Holocaust and how they might feel about this little comparison. Pretty sure they're not happy about it. Then, you know, you realize how fucking dumb this entire discourse around vaccination is. One more thing, by the way, just a fun note about Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie also had put out a tweet last year that was, once again, incredibly cringe. So cringe that former Secretary of State John Kerry was able to dunk on him. Here's what Kerry tweeted. Breaking news, Congressman Massie is tested positive for being an asshole. He must be quarantined to prevent the spread of his massive stupidity. He's given new meaning to the term masshole. Look, let me just say that when John Kerry can dunk on you, that's it. You're done, son. Go home. Clean up, go home. You're not coming back from that one. You're never, ever going to live that down. Sad. All right. I live in North Carolina. In the 2020 election, Trumpers would stand out in front of my nearest voting station with rifles and ask everyone, who are you voting for? Also, my family threatened to disown me if I didn't vote for Trump, so there are many forms of voter suppression. No, that's an excellent point. That is an excellent point. Yeah, am I allowed? Come on. Am I allowed to, like, dunk on Thomas Massey here? Yes, I know. John Kerry sucks. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of that statement of saying, well, John Kerry can dunk on you. That's it. You've lost. The whole point. The whole point. A national mandate may be eventually necessary, but try mandates for football, baseball, theaters, restaurants, etc. first. Yeah, look, that's probably where we're going to have to do that. So we are going to have to eventually do that. I'm in favor of trying that first, especially for flying. And by the way, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Delta Airlines, but there is an airline that is now charging like people $200 if they're not vaccinated. Pretty good. All right. So many weirdos today. But what is it? All right. Holy fuck. It's a heavy troll day. Yeah, well, somebody stirred up the hive, right? And of course, it's the Taliban. I think the Taliban did it. Jeez. Seven down votes. Jeff's popular today. Oh, that's nothing. Back in the day, ooh, it was bad. First woman, man, camera, TV. True. You know what? I think this is going to be my last story, because I do want to get out of here a little bit early, so I can head over to Ravana's stream, as I'm supposed to be there right after the show. So we're going to do one more story. We're going to talk about Tucker Carlson and how he doesn't seem to understand what being bisexual is. Weird. Fucking weird. So let's do that. Tucker Carlson seems to be a little confused about sexual orientation in general. On a segment from Wednesday's Tucker Carlson Tonight, he showed that he has zero understanding of what it means for someone to be bisexual. And so he uses the example of Oregon's governor. Take a look.
Kate Brown was first elected governor of Oregon way back in 2015. At the time, there was not a whole lot going on in Oregon, so voters didn't ask many questions. The one thing they did learn about Kate Brown over and over again is that she is a self-described bisexual. Why is this relevant? Well, the media didn't explain. They told us, without exactly explaining what it meant, that this fact was historic and it was highly thrilling. Kate Brown's sex life was shattering ceilings. Woohoo! And yet, if you looked a little closer, you noticed something a little weird. Actually, Kate Brown was married to a man. Yes, he had a different last name, but he was still, as they say on TikTok, binary. He was a dude. That's fine, of course, but it was also a little confusing.
Why is it confusing? Okay. Why is that weird? Why is that weird? Why is that even relevant? Again, it doesn't make any sense, right? So let me explain. All right. People who are bisexual, all that means is that the sex of the person that they're with matters less. than the person that they're with. You see what I mean? They can have romantic feelings of members from both sexes. Could have fallen in love with a woman, could have fallen in love with a man, which obviously she did, and vice versa. A bisexual man could be attracted to both men and women, obviously, and have sexual relations with either. Same for a bisexual woman. That's not weird. It's actually really simple. So simple, a white, married, cisgendered male can explain it to you. A fellow, I should say, white, male, cisgendered person. And by the way, for those of you who are asked what cisgender means, it basically describes a person whose gender identity matches the sex that they were assigned at birth. So there you go. I was born a male. I present as a male. My life is a male. It's super simple. This is not complicated. Okay. By the way, so now why is it relevant? Why am I talking about this? Well, here's the issue. So now, without any sort of evidence, I know, shocker, or anything to back him up, Tucker Carlson then asserts that you can't actually ask about these things. Here's that.
How does having a groom at her wedding make Kate Brown an official member of the LGBTQ exclamation point community? No one bothered to ask. That kind of curiosity was forbidden. It was like wondering why we don't call Barack Obama half white, which he is. It's not allowed. Stop with the questions. Celebrate. So voters in Oregon dutifully celebrated.
Oh, it's forbidden. Oh, you can't ask these questions. Well, actually, no, you can. You can absolutely ask those questions. Look, here's the thing. It wasn't too long ago that there was a time where I didn't know much about people who identified as, for example, non-binary or asexual. And you know what I did? I asked. Nicely, respectfully, of course. And now I know. And then I can assign, of course, the proper pronouns and things that make people generally comfortable, right? So now the thing is, okay, about Tucker's narrative and why this is very problematic and why I'm actually talking about this is, for one, of course, it's bi erasure. So he's trying to erase bisexual people. And that happens to be a problem in the bisexual community, them being erased for example, marrying a member of the opposite sex, as Kate Brown did. And also why it matters, why people were celebrating Kate Brown as governor, being the first bisexual governor, is because, well, there hasn't been many of those before. Anyway, so now the other thing, and this is more important, it's more detailed, he wants his viewers to believe that you are not allowed to ask these questions, that you are not allowed to be curious to know about other people, okay? And understand that this is actually based on a real fear, a real thing that experience. People are generally hesitant to ask those questions, you know, for fear of course, being rude or trying to pry into people's personal lives. And I absolutely understand that. I get it. But what Carlson is doing is then using and feeding into that fear and making it seem that if you are confused about what non-binary means or you know, bisexual means, or you don't quite understand the concepts behind that, which is, again, it is okay to not understand these things, as long as you're, of course, actually trying to find out what that really is, and it's based on a legitimate curiosity. But he wants them to think that, no, if you ask, if you have that curiosity, well, then you're going to be deemed a terrible person, you're going to be a bigot, and so therefore you should not ask. So for his viewers, if they believe that somebody's going to bite their head off for having this genuine curiosity, which is not the same as bigotry, okay? Those are two different things, very different things. Then they're going to be attacked and maligned and called terrible names by the left. Okay. And what that does is it reinforces the conservative victimhood narrative and also makes sure that they never understand people who happen to be different and will feel alienated and isolated from the rest of the country, who happens to be much more open and accepting than people in his audience. Part of acceptance, of course, is understanding. When you get to know people, when you get to understand them, you realize, for one, there's no threat to you, your marriage, your kids, your life, or anything like that for asking these questions. And then, of course, when you do ask these questions and when you do get to know people, when you get to talk to them, you realize that all they want to do is to live their lives and be respected as human beings. That's it. That's it. I've uncovered the gay agenda. The gay agenda is to be able to live your life. Wow. Wow. Oh my God. I figured it out. You don't think Tucker Carlson, big brain Tucker Carlson, could actually figure that out by himself? No, he already knows. And again, he's playing the audience. And that's what this is. Carlson is using this as a culture war issue in order to keep Americans divided among cultural lines, to make sure that people do not learn about their neighbors, people in their communities, and to keep, of course, culture war Republicans in power, Republicans who run on these things, so that they can eventually lower Tucker Carlson's taxes. And so that also people will continue to tune into his channel so they can find out what they need to be mad about today. Because that's the real only function that Tucker Carlson's show serves. Telling people what culture war issue they should be mad at. Now you know. All right. Rudy farted at his co-counsel Jenna Ellis, not the drunk girl. You know, it's hard to tell the difference for me. All right. So, that's it. That's really all I have time for right now. Tune in next. We're going to raid into TYT. I'm going to be there for reactions. So, migrate over to that to see me answer some questions and some news stories about what is fake news. I'm going to play this new game. Be a lot of fun. Tune into that with Ravana and I later on in the show. So we're going to set that up here in a minute. We're going to do that. By the way, I'm Christina. Wait, I'm Christina Bot. What the? Is that yours? Does that belong to you? I don't know. I'm gonna have. I got questions. All right. That said, we're gonna do that. Thank you all. Love you, and remember, change begins with you. Night Nation. We'll see you next soon.
Dumps. Big, massive dumps.
And then we'll say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Please clap.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.